How's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining me on this vlog here, where the topic of discussion that I'm going to have here with John Cartwright, a former teacher of mine, is we're going to talk about religion and some things that are impacting religion from the outside. But first and foremost, I'm introducing here John Cartwright. John, say hello.
Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Dan and I go way back. I remember Dan when he was a scrawny little middle schooler, basically. So it's cool to see him all grown up.
I really appreciate you joining me. You're joining me from Virginia, right?
Yep. My family and I have been here now for almost 11 years. I work at Liberty University in the School of Divinity, department chair there. My primary role is oversight of all of the curriculum and degree programs. So if we're assessing degree programs or we're building new ones, I'm usually involved in leading the way in a big part there. So that's my primary thing. My wife and I have been married for over 20 years now. We have 4 kids. And so, Dan, when I knew you, I don't even know if I was married yet.
No.
Our oldest is 16, then we've got a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a soon-to-be 9-year-old. And so our life is full here, but good. So anyway,
that's awesome to hear. No, that's awesome to hear. 20 years ago would put me at about 38, 18 years old. I'm 38 now, so 18 years old. If that's going to make you feel old.
Oh, of course. But you know, I teach sometimes residentially, and you know, the students I have are younger than you. So
sure.
I mean, when I went to college and none of them were born yet, we kind of use 9/11 as that like benchmark. So I've got students that were born now after 9/11, and
sure,
it's crazy how fast time flies.
It's definitely in the I assume it's called like the College of Divinity or the Divinity program that you have at Liberty. What kind of degrees? What kind of different degrees or studies do you have in that field?
Sure. Well, we offer everything from undergraduate all the way through doctoral programs in the School of Divinity. We have degrees, bachelor's degrees in biblical studies, global studies, religion, which is a little more general,
sure.
Apologetics, which is sort of like evangelism and philosophy combined, how to defend what you believe, how to answer hard questions. At the graduate level, we have masters in theology. We have Master of Divinity, which is a pretty popular program at a seminary level, Masters in Global Studies, a variety of programs like that. At the doctoral level, we have a Doctor of Ministry. We have a Doctor of Education and Christian Leadership, which is the program that I help run and teach in. We have a PhD in Theology and Apologetics and a PhD in Bible Exposition. So kind of a variety, and altogether in the School of Divinity, between the residential program and the online programs, I'd say we probably have somewhere between 10 and 15,000 students just in the School of Divinity. And that's part of a bigger university that has over 100,000 students in it.
Wow. That's quite the program you have there. And how many are on the football team?
We do get some Divinity students that play on the football team, but it's a big school, so we don't really get to know them that well.
Well, you're having a good season this year, so I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Of all the seasons not to be able to go watch them play, it's been kind of sad. We usually get season tickets and go to all the games, so but we're still happy for their success.
No, they've been having a good season, and you know, it's good to see those kind of schools have good seasons and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because you know, it's not an every season, not an every year type of thing. It's just kind of you know, it's probably up and down at those, you know, at that level of school.
Sure, so. And we've been trying to break into FBS level for a while, so this is just our second year in the FBS. So last year they went to a bowl game and ended up winning it, and this year I don't think anybody really expected them to have the success. They probably expected it, but we lost our starting quarterback last year to graduation, so we weren't really. Who knows what everyone else was expecting. I was expecting a decent year, but nothing like what we've had. It's been cool to watch.
It's been definitely one of those I guess you could say Cinderella stories in a sense in the college football world. An
Yeah,
unknown, I wouldn't say it's unknown, but one of the lesser known schools that actually have a football team, Liberty, has
yeah,
definitely caught the eye of college football fans. You beat Virginia Tech and whatnot. So,
yeah. We were one field goal attempt away from beating NC State as well, and
right.
of course, COVID got us in the end. We were supposed to play Coastal Carolina this weekend, and BYU ended up playing them and losing to them. Now, Coastal and Liberty go way back. They were at the FCS. They were in the same division for a while, so we played them every year, and so it's actually a really big rivalry. So it's kind of a neat, like, they were both having these amazing seasons, and this past Saturday was supposed to be sort of this renewed rivalry. Game day was going to be there, and half our team got COVID, and that was the end of that.
Oh wow, that stinks. Well, the topic of discussion we're going to have tonight is going to center around religion.
Hmm.
Your expertise, the field that you have studied at for quite some time here. It's going to center basically around two different topics of religion. Technology, which we were discussing offline a bit, and how that has changed the world of business in a sense, and
Hmm.
definitely has changed religion and how people are exposed to it in a lot of different ways, and also politics, because politics, especially in 2020, um, has a major influence in basically every arena of every aspect of life, one way or another, whether you like it, disagree with it, agree with it. It has an influence one way or another.
Yeah.
Uh, Religion and politics don't always go hand in hand, but at the same time they do. It's religion. The way I see it is religion and politics are two topics that are very polarizing. They could be very divisive because not everybody believes in God. Some people have their doubts, and some people are atheists and whatnot, and they'll argue to the end of that. And then you have the political side. We know you have Republicans, Democrats, left, right, wrong,
Hmm.
whatever. Uh, how do you see the intertwining of politics and religion, and how do you discuss that in a classroom setting without you know getting people to be excluded, or trying to make people fight, but actually having an honest discussion when it comes to religion and politics.
Yeah, very carefully is what I would say up front. Especially these days, there seems to be a very much a heightened sensitivity
Hmm.
um, to political conversations, more so than ever, I think, in my lifetime, at least that I can remember. Um, I always start with this idea that everybody has a worldview. If you're an atheist, you have a worldview. You have a belief system of some sort. You might not believe in God, but you believe in something. And so I always try to put to rest this idea that one way of thinking has belief and another way of thinking does not. That's just to me, that's nonsense. Everybody believes something. If you choose not to believe in God, you're choosing to believe something else. So, in that sense, everybody's religious in a way. Whether or not they follow a formal religion is a different question. As a Christian, I would say that there are two ideas that live in tension with each other for me. Uh, First, that God is sovereign over everything, and that I can trust Him. And so, if something is not going the way that I think it should in our world, whether it be the result of an election or a worldwide pandemic that can be political as well, um, I come to this restful conclusion that this world is not my home, and that I can't place all of my trust in what's happening around me. And that's a place of peace. But it doesn't mean I don't care. And so that's the other extreme.
Right.
We shouldn't be people that are apathetic to the whole thing, because if God is sovereign over all of it and wants His people to be good citizens and active, then that may look different for different people, but at the very least, we should care, and we should take a position, and we should be active. Um, is there a place for lawful gathering and protesting? Yeah, absolutely. I think, some of the things our country is built on is these ideas of freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And so I do think that you do it through legal means. You do it in a way that's going to honor the God that you claim to worship and you claim to serve. So I don't think we should be running for the hills and just kind of hiding. I think for me, what I encourage students is be active. Whatever area of your life God's calling you to, whatever walk of life, whether it's medicine or law or business, you go down the list of possible vocations. If you're a child of God, he wants you to be a faithful presence wherever that is. And that could include politics as well. So that's kind of my very short version of what I would summarize. And I would say believers and unbelievers alike, or religious or non-religious alike, who put way too much stock into the political landscape. And then I know others who are just like, I don't care. I really don't care. I don't know that that's a healthy position either. I think we should care. I think, the way our country works is relies on the citizens to care and to take it seriously. But at the end of the day, if your guy didn't win, that doesn't mean the sky's falling. God's still in control. So, as a child of God, as somebody who believes that firmly, you can always wake up in the morning, regardless of what's happening in that sense. I mean, if the Apostle Paul could write from prison to rejoice in all circumstances and to be content no matter what, my life isn't nearly that difficult. And so if he can say that, I can do that. So that's kind of how I roll.
No, that's a good point there with the Apostle Paul. One of the examples I think about, with politics in the Bible, in a sense, is when I think it was the Pharisees that were trying to trap Jesus in the whole, should we give money to Caesar? Should we give our taxes and all that? And he says, well, give to Caesar, give to Caesar, which is Caesar's, give to God, which is God. And then they're trying to trap, trying to make political. I don't know if that really makes sense or anything.
Sure.
But,
well, you're right. They were trying to trap him, and he gave an answer that kind of blew their mind. But here's something about that answer. He gets if remember the whole story. They pull a coin out of a fish's mouth, and they basically say, look at the image on this coin. Whose image is on that coin? And the answer is Caesar. And so he says, so render to Caesar that which is Caesar's.
Right.
But then he says something else there that most people just kind of miss. And he says, but render to God what is God's. Right. And so the idea is it's a play on words. That word image that's stamped into that coin is the same word we use for the image of God. So what we say is the interpretation of that passage is, yes, we may owe taxes to the government, render to Caesar what's Caesar's, but what do we owe to God? Where is his image stamped? It's stamped in each of us. And so he's making a bigger point there, which is forget about money, whether or not you have to pay a lot of taxes or a little bit of taxes. Forget all of that. The most important thing that you owe is you owe yourself to God. His image is stamped into each of us. And it's the same word that he uses for both of those.
Amen. One of the things that you said that kind of jumped out at me was, I know people, and you said you had students that just say, oh, I don't care about politics. I just don't care. I don't pay attention, whatever. But here's the thing is, politics pays attention to us, and it really does pay attention to the religious sector of our lives. One of the things that you could YouTube for days about pastors and reverends and whatnot preaching from the pulpit and preaching political aspects one way or another from the pulpit. You see, for an example, in New York, where you have the mayor and the governor trying to shut down these Jewish synagogues and whatnot, but you can keep the strip club open. These are these in that Jewish community there. I forget the name of the community there in New York City.
Oh, the Hasidic Jews, I think you're talking about.
Yeah. And they've all gathered together, and they protested their way, and they're not going to back down, and let the government dictate how they should worship or if they should be open or whatnot. And I think that's probably maybe the point you're getting at is like, hey, we shouldn't just roll over and die. We shouldn't just roll over and just, let government. We should stand up. We should voice not only our concern, but what's the word? What's the phrase I'm looking for? We should definitely not just tip over and just let say, oh well, God's in control of everything. I'm just going to sit here and just roll over. No,
Right.
because God has definitely instilled in us a way for logic and reason, and for us to be able to stand up for ourselves. And that's the problem with politics, in my view. Politics, intermeaning with religion in some not so good ways. I don't know what your view is on that. I don't know what you've seen on that, but we live in a society now where churches are being closed. You can't even have a church in the church parking lot, have a sermon in church parking lot. Everybody's 10 feet from each other. Cops are coming in arresting people, but a strip club down the street can be wide open. And
Yeah,
that's the problem
it
with
does.
society these days.
Well, what are essential services? That's kind of the golden question right now in the middle of all this. What gets shut down? What doesn't get shut down? I do think I've seen that vary from state to state, for sure. In Virginia, our church has outdoor services early, and then they have an indoor service. And so for the indoor service, they follow the regulations the governor has put into place. But it does beg the question, how can this group of people be allowed to continue to function and yet this group not? It's hard not to see an agenda in all of that. And so I don't think that's always the case, but it's hard not to see it in these kinds of cases. And, to the degree that churches feel like they ought to, I think they need to carefully consider what it looks like to certainly appeal to the government and take a stand. I don't know that everything that comes down is something that rises to the level of what some would refer to as civil disobedience. I think the biggest mistake that people make when they start talking about civil disobedience is, when you look at the Bible and you see that the apostles were willing to go to jail to preach the gospel. Sometimes they went to jail for preaching the gospel. I think sometimes people, they want to talk about civil disobedience, but they're not willing to potentially have to pay the negative consequences that come with that. We love the idea of, rising up and, standing up to the government, but do we love the idea potentially of that costing us? And so, when you talk about civil disobedience, it's a very serious subject. And I would say if somebody feels like they're being prevented from obeying God or being required to do something that God has strictly forbidden, and I think those are probably the two, case scenarios that you could look at, then they feel that civil disobedience is warranted, that may be something that out of conscience they need to do. At the same time, there might be an actual consequence that comes with that. And so, you don't see people in the Bible taking these stands out of obedience to God and them always being delivered from consequences. Sometimes you see that miraculous deliverance, but sometimes guys went to jail and were beaten and even killed, as martyrs for their faith. So I think you have to weigh that all very carefully. What am I being prevented from doing? Are we allowed to participate in all of the church stuff that we were doing? No. But are we able to go and worship every Sunday with our family? Yeah, we are. Maybe in some states that's not the case, and that's a different ball game for them.
Yeah, it's very fortunate. Down here in Florida, DeSantis and not to get too political, this whole thing, but certain states, like you said, really haven't had that issue, and other states have, unfortunately. And I have seen pastors and of all different faiths, rise up, I guess you could say, and be vocal about government intrusion into religion because it's embedded in the Constitution. It's one of the founding freedoms that the founding fathers have
Sure.
in our Constitution. That not only the freedom of speech, but the freedom of religion, the separation of church and state, so forth and so on.
Hmm.
Um, so I agree with what you said. It's evaluating the whole thing and saying, is this what is God trying to do through me to you know through the church, through me with the church, and in these different times, because there's some
Sure.
churches that are made open and we're able to have church parking lots, and some other churches were just getting shut down and having to face what they're facing.
I think some people just like to fight, honestly, because,
True, true.
I see some people complaining about this on Facebook, and I'm like, you don't even go to church when there is no COVID. So you just like to be kind of all worked up about something.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. Like, the rhetoric is just out of control for a lot of people. And I see a lot of false dichotomies out there where it's like, if you take a position where you feel like church should be open, then you want people to die from COVID. You're automatically labeled. Or if you're like, no, we need to play it safe, you're automatically labeled as this pacifist that will just do whatever the government tells them.
Right.
And unfortunately, we create caricatures of the other side, and then we debate these fictitious characters instead of having real conversations about it. So that's what you see in social media more than anything, is just these people that are all worked up and not really actually talking to each other.
No, I agree with you, and this is one of the purposes of me reaching out to you. When I have been listening to different. I haven't listened to the entire thing in entirety, but you listen to different 5, 6, 7 minute segments of Frank Turek. I think I'm saying his last name right. He gives a lot of different speeches around and it's about religion. It's about different topics of God and no God and atheism and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all interesting. And all of a sudden it's like a light bulb went in my head, and I was like, I know some people who really know their stuff when it comes to religion and the Bible and Christianity and whatnot. And you were one of the ones that I reached out to, and this is the whole purpose, to have this conversation, because I have definitely have my views, when it comes to politics and religion, as you do as well. And I love having these conversations because picking the brain of somebody, because it's about learning somebody else's perspective, and you're like, man, I didn't think of it like that. You said some things that I didn't think of it like that. When you talked about the Apostle John, Apostle John that went to jail.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like Paul, and he went to jail, and he's still doing what he's doing from jail. And not everybody wants to stand up and fight. It's some good points you made, which which is why I love having these conversations. So the last question regarding politics and religion: how would you say is the best way to balance the two? Because politics, like I said earlier, politics and religion are very polarizing topics. They could be very polarizing. They could bring people together, and at the same time, they could devise people very, very quickly. I think politics may be a little bit more religion. That's just maybe the state of the nation these days. But what is your view as far as balancing the two?
Well, I think people like to say these things that sound really good, like my faith is personal and private. And I think there's some truth to that, but that doesn't mean that what you believe should not have implications on your public way of living. And, who you vote for in some ways can be a reflection of some of those personal principles that are just an outgrowth of your faith. For me, the issue of the unborn has been one that has remained near and dear to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not a one issue voter. However, what I believe about life, especially now as a dad, has had a deep impact on that whole view in terms of politics. These politics are not amoral. Like there are issues of morality that are part of the political conversation. So we can't just untangle them. They're there. And so as a Christian that holds that view very firmly based on what I believe the scripture teaches, it needs to affect my choices. What we believe internally, whether we see it this way or not, Dan, absolutely impact the decisions that we make in other areas of our life. And so that's not a political position for me, but it has political implications.
Sure.
Because absolutely I want to see the unborn protected. And so if I can see a day where more is done to protect the unborn, and my vote helps a trickle down where that happens, that's going to weigh heavily on my decision. And so, yes, your faith is personal and private in one sense, because you and only you are going to stand before God one day.
Correct.
And so in that way, yes, it's personal and private. But the Bible doesn't teach this idea that your life is hidden and nobody knows about it. Jesus said the opposite. He said, "Let your light shine before men so that they may see your good works and glorify my Father which is in heaven." And so the way that we apply that is that our faith gets lived out in every area of our lives, our family life, our way of doing business, our way of being a neighbor, and yes, our way of voting at times. I mean, there are issues that you can't separate from what you believe, or at least it's hard to. And this is a weird time in politics because I would say personally, I didn't feel like I had very good options this year. Like, it's not like one was the perfect model of what I think a president ought to be and the other wasn't at all. I felt like, wow, these are our options. That's kind of how I felt this year. But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but as someone who follows God, as a Christ follower, yes, my faith is personal. It's part of who I am internally. But if you read your Bible, it's never to remain there. It's supposed to be something that you live outwardly and affects every area of your life. And yes, even potentially politically.
I think one of the things you said was what was very true is, what is it that, when I say you, I mean not only just you, but in people in general. What is it that you believe in, and what is it that's most important to you based on your faith? And I agree with you 100% regarding abortion, regarding the protection of the unborn. That's a big one with me as well. Especially as a father. That hits even. I was like that before I became a father, but even more now. It's it went from like here to here. I mean, it just went up, and I went from abortion is wrong in so many ways, and it whatever. But at the same time, you could sit here and justify certain things, and now that's not the case, because not only becoming a father, but having my background with religion and having my background in Christianity as well. That's one of the things that I think that if more people, here's my stance on it. I think if more people actually chose candidates based upon what they believe in versus just trying to be on a winning team or on a winning side, I think as a country, we would be far better off.
Yeah, and I think, something important in all of this is that Christian activism can't be limited to what's happening in the political sphere. What does it look like to engage people in society in a civil way and ask hard questions, give them something to think about? Here's an example that I would give you. Sex trafficking is rampant all over the world and in our country. I don't know a single person, atheist or Christian, that thinks that sex trafficking is good and okay.
Right.
Maybe I don't know enough people, but I don't know. These are people that I want to know.
Sure.
So, one way to the conversation is to say, well, we're both against something like sex trafficking. We can work together on that, but if you ask me why I'm against sex trafficking, I would say for the same reason that I'm against abortion, because I believe that everybody is created in the image of God. And then I would say to someone that doesn't believe in God, so why are you against sex trafficking, but okay with killing the unborn? I feel like my way of thinking is consistent there, and it springs out of what I believe. We're horrified at something like sex trafficking, and we should be, so what does even a view of life is precious and to God, how does that affect other areas of our life? As a believer, rejecting racism, doing more for less fortunate. Going to Rwanda has been an eye-opener for me, to go there and to learn about the genocide that took place in the 90s, and to see if people come through such a horrible civil war, and there's so much unity in that country now. Very eye-opening, a lot to learn there. So anyway, I know I've been wandering off a little bit, but I think that answers your question. It sounds like we can't rely, I guess my main point is we can't rely solely on politics to make headway on an issue like that. You can have hopefully what is civil discourse with people with whom you disagree, and hopefully bring them around to what might be a better point of view.
Segueing to the technology aspect between technology and religion, and having those discussions, one of the, technology has made it easier to have those discussions, whether it's what we're doing right now or through Facebook posts, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever. You could post, you could YouTube videos for days. It's really made it easier for people from all over the world to exchange ideas, philosophies, and whatnot. What good and what bad from technology, in your view, has had its impact on religion?
Yeah, I mean, you phrased the question really well. What good and what bad? First of all, technology is a tool, and there's so much good that can come from the ability to, have a Zoom face-to-face with someone that you haven't seen in forever. I talked to some of my friends in Rwanda. I've got a friend in the Bahamas. Stuff that we could never do, not even that long ago, we're able to do now. I mean, my whole career at Liberty has revolved around online education. So people are able to get these higher education degrees all the way up to their doctorate from anywhere in the world they can have an internet connection. It's just mind-blowing to think about, right? And imagine COVID and the inability to do YouTube church or whatever. There's nothing like being with someone, but certainly that was better than nothing for a while.
Sure.
So, you have on the one end so much productive value that's come out of technology, and yet on the other end, so much just wicked, awful stuff that's out there. And just, speaking of sex trafficking, I mean, I don't know if I could say this with absolute certainty, but I have a friend who has a ministry that's for people that struggle with pornography addiction. And he said that the same people that are absolutely against something like sex trafficking have no idea how much the porn industry is infiltrated with sex trafficking victims.
I've heard a lot of that
too.
So
you see these two worlds come together. On the one end, you've got this highly addictive vice that destroys people, destroys families. And on the other end, you've got all of the good of technology. So what we have here is a scenario where good biblical wisdom has to be applied. You know, you've got your basic framework for knowing right from wrong, but knowing right from wrong and choosing right from wrong are two different things, right? That old cliche, you know, knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. You know, that taking knowledge and applying it in the right way, that's what wisdom is. And so we have to have wisdom. We have to be aware of, frankly, the evil that's out there, that's just potentially could destroy us. And it's not just pornography. There's all sorts of other evils that are out there. And just the world of Facebook that's made it so easy to talk with people has also created this place that's just kind of a constant argument, you know, and people get all stirred up in ways that they never did before. Think about this subtle one, this idea of constantly feeling like you're not enough or you don't have enough because you see what other people have on social media, or the way that they presented what they have on social media, you know, and how much it's created even a more subtle thing like discontent. And that can be just a seed in somebody's life that has these, to me, dangerous ripple effects.
Yeah, that's you made a lot of good points there. You know, with technology, how have you seen the churches you've attended over, say, just the last decade?
Mm-hmm.
You know, even at Liberty or you know, in the churches, how have you seen technology being used for outreach? How have you seen them use the technology to spread the word, to
Yeah.
to reach those not only just in the community but also out there as well?
Well, you know, you have all your basic stuff that's been going on forever, which is, you know, instead of having like hymn books in the pews that got the music up on the screen, you know, little things like that. And then you have now the extreme where a lot of churches, especially larger churches, were starting to offer some of their services via the internet. It started out something to offer people that are kind of, you know, homebound because of sickness. But now a lot of churches are doing it out of necessity because of COVID. And regardless of how you feel about that as a normal thing, it's certainly been a blessing to be able to, you know, go to church by watching it on YouTube or Facebook Live or whatever. I would say that in general, technology has made the world smaller in good ways.
Yeah.
You know, we can, I mentioned Rwanda a couple times. We have friends over there that are native Rwandans that, you know, we can be much more aware of what their needs are, and go there and do something that's actually impactful, and then stay in touch with them. You know, so certainly technology can be used absolutely for the glory of God, and it's being done. Education, discipleship ministries, you know, being able to even sign up for stuff. I mean, recruitment for volunteers used to be, you know, a huge challenge for churches, and it's still a challenge to get people to volunteer, but the mechanism of technology has made that a whole lot easier. So there's a long list of benefits. I think what we have to be careful of is that technology can never replace what God meant in terms of like fellowship with each other. You know, artificial intelligence isn't intended to replace the body of Christ. And so what does fellowship with believers look like? What does meeting each other's needs, provoking each other to doing what's right, calling each other's sin out, which is a biblical idea. You know, technology can still be useful for that, but it's not a great place to have in-depth conversations. It's just a short-sighted medium. There's a lot of room for misunderstanding, and the feelings get hurt pretty fast. I mean, I know you've probably been in a lot of Facebook debates where people have changed your mind and you've changed other people's minds, but at least in my experience, that hasn't happened ever. So anyway, that's just a few things that I would say technology has benefited the church. But again, if we're not careful, we could see it as an end rather than a means and a medium to an end.
Right. You just can't have it more of a permanent thing. It's just a temporary stopgap to keep things
Hmm.
going. And I agree. I prefer going to church and having it online, or
Yeah.
because it's so easy to get distracted when you're sitting in
Hmm.
your house, and maybe you're just looking down your phone or whatever, and maybe you're not
Yeah.
paying, because they have no idea if you're paying attention or not. You
Right.
know.
Well, to me, sometimes that's the thing with a large church, that anonymity, whether or not you're there, known or whatever, no, but it does raise the question, like, what is the church really? And so if this whole global pandemic has prevented you from physically being able to go to a building once a week, um, in the first century when the church began, they didn't have church buildings. They met in houses. Church was a completely different construct. And so we were in a Bible study this summer, my wife and I, and we were asking that question, you know, what are we learning from this about church? Like, when this all goes back to normal, whatever normal is going to be,
Mhm.
um, will we have a different view of church, that it's much more than just a place I go once a week to
Mhm.
hear, to sing, and to be with my family, and to hear a sermon? um, shouldn't there be more to the life of a church than just that, just going to church once a week? So I think it's caused a lot of people to ask that question.
It's a very interesting question. It's not something that there's an easy answer to, or an
Right.
answer that really most people even or anybody has. It's just it's we were hit with the pandemic, all of a sudden, and then people whether it's church or jobs, we all had to adapt one way or another.
Hmm.
Luckily, in the technological age we live in, it was a smoother, faster transition versus if this were to happen back in 95 or in the
Oh
90s.
yeah.
So it would have made it that much more difficult, that much, way to, even do this or do
Hmm.
online schooling or church or whatever. So technology does have its good and its bad when it comes to whether it's religion or anything else.
Yeah.
Um, that's gonna do it here for the conversation here. We're definitely, you and I are definitely gonna have more conversations when it comes to other aspects and other angles. Religion, because this has got my brain going on this.
Hmm.
I really appreciate you joining me for this conversation. Mr. Cartwright. It's hard for me to say John because all those years of saying Mr. Cartwright. I'm picturing you with your guitar doing your songs
Oh
and
my
everything.
gosh,
So
it's like a lifetime ago. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Testing Time was my favorite song. I still have
Yep.
that in my head. I swear, I still know some of the lyrics to that song. I
That's
was there when you
awesome.
wrote some of the lyrics, so
Yep.
I remember that very vividly. Uh,
Yep.
I really appreciate you joining me after all these years. It's been probably 20 plus years, since you
Yep.
and I have last talked. But we can talk like this as if we just spoke yesterday, which is awesome. Uh,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
get together with old friends and teachers and whatnot. And I promise to have the homework in tomorrow. Uh,
Okay, you better.
I'm a
Yeah.
little late on it, but you my dog ate it yesterday, so.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, it's good chat with you, Dan. And absolutely, if you want to do it again, just let me know.
Absolutely. For those of you who went to Dade Christian, Mr. Holshoff teaches with you over at Liberty. He's one of the
Hmm.
faculty members at Liberty. I know he's interested in jumping in the conversation, so hopefully we'll have him and we'll have a three-way
We'll
conversation,
do a little.
with this topic.
We'll do a little DCS reunion. We'll get Miss D on here. I'm sure she'd love that. It would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. The more the merrier. I love having these conversations, listen to different, aspects and different sides to a particular question or topic. It's a lot of fun.
Yep.
I love having conversations that of topics that intrigue me, which is the reason why I'm doing this. And
Hmm.
uh, I really appreciate it. And we'll do this again soon. Probably,
All right.
probably until after the holidays. We'll probably, do it again in beginning of
Sure.
January to after the New Year's. But I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best.
Yes, sir. Have a good night.
You too.
Take care.
All right.